In the late 18th century, the transatlantic slave trade operated as one of the most brutal economic systems in history. Human beings were bought, transported, and sold as cargo. Among the many ships that crossed the ocean, one voyage in 1781 would become infamous, not for rebellion or storm, but for a calculated decision driven by profit. The ship was called the Zong. Originally a Dutch vessel, it had been captured by the British and repurposed for the slave trade. In August 1781, the Zong departed from the west coast of Africa, carrying more than 440 enslaved Africans, far exceeding what the ship could safely hold. Overcrowding was not unusual. More bodies meant more potential profit. Mortality was expected and factored into business calculations. The ship's captain, Luke Collingwood, was not an experienced commander of slave voyages. Reports suggest he was already in poor health when the journey began. Navigation errors soon compounded the situation. The Zong missed its intended route to Jamaica, extending the voyage by weeks. Supplies began to run dangerously low. Below deck, conditions deteriorated rapidly. The enslaved were packed tightly together, chained with little ventilation. Disease spread quickly. Many were already dying. By late November, the crew claimed that drinking water was running out. Whether this shortage was as severe as later, argued remains disputed. What is known is the decision that followed. Under maritime insurance law at the time, enslaved people were considered cargo. If cargo was lost due to necessity at sea, such as being jettisoned to save the ship, the loss could be CL. However, deaths from illness were not covered. Faced with dwindling supplies and mounting losses from disease, the crew made a calculated choice. Over several days they began throwing enslaved Africans overboard. The narration slows. On the 29th of November, 1781, the first group over 50 individuals were forced into the ocean. In the following days, more were thrown overboard in waves. Some accounts describe people resisting, others being shackled together as they were cast into the sea. By the end, approximately 132 enslaved Africans had been killed in this way. The ocean closes over them, leaving no trace. The ship eventually reached Jamaica. There, the owners of the Zong filed an insurance claim for the loss of what they described, not as people, but as cargo seeking compensation for the murdered individuals. What followed was not a murder trial, but a civil court case. Gregson v. Gilbert. The courtroom is reconstructed. Dark wood, powdered wigs, quiet tension. The ship owners argued that the killings were necessary to preserve the rest of the cargo and the vessel. The insurers disagreed, claiming negligence, arguing that the water shortage was due to navigational errors and mismanagement. Notably, the initial trial paid little attention to the humanity of those killed. The enslaved Africans were discussed in terms of property and financial loss. One figure, however, brought the case into a different light: Granville Sharp, an abolitionist who learned of the massacre after the trial. Outraged, he sought to have the crew prosecuted for murder. But the legal system did not pursue criminal charges. The case remained confined to the realm of insurance dispute. The Zong Massacre became a powerful symbol within the growing abolitionist movement. Though the courts did not deliver justice for the victims, public awareness of the massacre spread. The stark reality that over 100 people had been deliberately killed for financial compensation. Shocked, abolitionists used the case to expose the brutality and logic of the slave trade. It illustrated how human lives had been reduced entirely to economic units within a system designed no memorial marks the exact location where those 132 individuals were killed. Their names are largely unknown, their stories unrecorded. Yet their deaths became part of a broader historical turning point, fueling arguments that would decades later contribute to the abolition of the slave trade in 1807. The Zong Massacre was not an isolated act of cruelty, but a reflection of a system where violence and profit were inseparable. It revealed, in stark terms, how law, commerce, and human life were intertwined, and how, in that moment, the value of a life was measured against the cost of water. The waves continue, indifferent and endless.